who's ready to talk Xbox. I'm ready to talk about some Xbox. Ladies and gentlemen, this week we got the reveal of Project Helix. This is the code name for the next Xbox, and it was dropped 2 days ago as we record this. And as you can see here, it was just dropped by Xbox, the next generation of the Xbox console, and it was this animation here. Funny enough, this little logo here does remind me of like a car. Like, could you not see this like on some sedan or something like that? I digress, though. It speaks to the mission statement, like it's a DNA, it's mixing together. Yes, we see the vision here because it is a system that will be playing both Xbox games and PC games, which has brought about its own form of controversy that I want to debate with everyone here. And then we'll talk about, of course, exclusivity, because this is drawing a bit of a line in the sand here. The tweet from Asha Sharma, which we already talked about on the Mr. Matty Plays channel, was her saying, "Great start to the morning with Team Xbox," where we talked about our commitment to the return of Xbox, including Project Helix, the code name for our next generation console. Project Helix will lead in performance and play your Xbox and PC games. Looking forward to chatting about this more with partners and studios at my first GDC next week. So we won't have to wait long to get information on this. On March 11th, we're getting new info at GDC about what's going on with the next generation of Xbox. So it's there. I think they'll paint the picture a little bit more. A couple of things. Why do they do this so soon? I think it's to draw a line in the sand between Asha and Phil. I think this was already part of the plan. I don't think like Asha stepped in and decided, okay, I'm going to reveal this next console early. I think this is sort of like what you see with a presidency, for example. Like when you step into office, there's still like policy active from the prior president. Things don't just stop and then shift on over. It's like the policy's still going. So what does the president do? They, take credit for all the good stuff and then they blame all the bad stuff on the prior president, right? So I view this as, again, a line in the sand moment, an important one at that. I'm not discrediting or saying Xbox is silly for this, but I think that's what they're doing here, is trying to kind of be like, this is now the Asha Sharma era, even though Phil Spencer greenlit whatever Project Helix was and that vision. And I don't think Asha's here to come in and change that. She's inheriting a vision. And so, again, I think a big announcement like this is good, though. It's well-timed because it's in synchronization with her as the head of Xbox and sort of makes it feel like, okay, we're doing something. We're moving forward here. Let's draw a line in the sand. And key word here is that she calls it a next-generation console, as does Xbox, the next generation of Xbox console. Why is this important? Well, let's get into our first debate here. And I usually don't like to stick my head into these things, but I do find it to be interesting based on what we know versus what's being said. But I got to get to the source of the debate. So just bear with me for a second here, because you know me, I don't like the he said, she said stuff, but let's get into it. So Jeff Keighley says Xbox has announced that Project Helix is the code name for the next generation PC-based Xbox hardware device. Now, I read this and I didn't really blink. Like, I was like, okay, Jeff does this. He tweets out the news, usually the big heavy hitters, and lets people know what's going on here. This turned into a controversy because it's like, again, to be fair, console, and then we look at what Jeff had to say for himself, PC-based Xbox hardware device. I usually give the Xbox community on Twitter a lot of grief, but I can understand when you read this, you're probably like, it's just easier to write console in the first place. Like, this almost feels deliberate to go out of your way. So naturally, as a lot of communities on Twitter do, they were intending on Jeff paying the price for his words here. But I thought it led to an interesting conversation that I wanted to have, in all seriousness here. So Tom Warren says, PC-based Xbox hardware device, I think you mean the Xbox console. And Jeff says, do you consider Steam Machine a console? And you can already see based on the ratio of replies here, we know how Twitter goes. Tom says Valve calls it a PC probably because it's designed to run PC games and not console versions. I'd imagine Microsoft is calling the next-gen Xbox a console because it's designed to run Xbox console games as well as PC games. And this is an important note to make here because, for example, that could be a big deal for GTA 6. Right now, if you were to buy a PC and only game on PC, you can't play GTA 6 because GTA 6 is going to be a console game. But if you have an Xbox, you can play GTA 6 on your console at the same time as experiencing all of your PC library. It does create a very open-ended platform, which I think is a positive here. In conclusion, Jeff says, what is an Xbox console game in your definition? And is that different than a UWP game? Obviously, lots more we need to learn about the plans here and excited to hear more. And I do kind of agree with it. I think we're running away with a couple of headlines here when we haven't even seen the device itself. But what is this? Well, good thing we have our friend Jez Corden, who has done a lot of reporting on what this is going to be. And then we can decide from there, is it a traditional console here? Jez himself writes, the next-gen Xbox is starting to take shape, and new signals from Asus suggest Microsoft is targeting 2027 for its next hardware push. That lines up with what I reported last year. Microsoft's future console is shaping up to be far more closer to a streamlined Windows 11 gaming PC than a traditional Xbox box. This is key because a lot of people are saying, again, it's a console, but I do feel as we read these details from Jez, who I trust his Xbox reporting, I read this and think it does fall more in line with a PC, but it's a little more ambiguous. I think it's interesting and exciting that we're kind of unsure what it is, but I get the idea that it's going to play console games, but like, will it have a disk drive or an attachable disk drive? These are good questions to be asking here, because Jez again defines it as, the idea is simple but bold. The next Xbox will run a TV-first console interface, but by default, underneath, it's essentially a full Windows machine capable of running Xbox titles, legacy games, and a wide range of PC software. If Microsoft pulls this off, the next generation won't just be about faster hardware, it'll be about redefining what Xbox actually is. So I kind of like Jeff's description a little bit, because I'm like, yeah, this is like an Xbox hardware device, but like it fits into the PC mold, it fits into the console mold. It is new and kind of like the Steam machine. That's what makes it exciting. I feel like it fits both molds. Again, for those who have not been paying attention, just to catch you up a little bit more on some of Jez's reporting here, he did write that Microsoft hasn't fully committed to a hard 2027 launch window. I think this is really important to note because, again, I mentioned how this is sort of the drawing the line in the sand for Asha, and I think this sort of marks that sort of occasion in a more significant way beyond the announcement. It's like you can feel it. Like, this is an Asha move, even if it probably isn't. It feels like we're making that step forward here. But he defines 2027 as a best case scenario for having a polished experience is the North Star for Xbox here. So yeah, it's one of those things where they've kind of announced it, I think, to start talking with developers about their vision, because I think their vision needs to be explained earlier. We saw a entire chart that polled developers, and 20% of developers were interested in making games for Xbox, but PC was the lead platform because PC has been growing the most. And also it's where we see a lot of like explosive virality. We see a lot of players engaging. We feel like momentum is on PC. So if Xbox is as much a PC as it is a console, this is great news for them, because if you make a PC version, you've made an Xbox version. And that's why, again, I think it's a little bit more ambiguous than Twitter debates would say here, but I am excited to learn more. So do I think it's a console? At the end of the day, yeah, because it's going to play your Xbox games. I think there's not much to be said there, but I also understand why Jeff may not have actually labeled it a full-on console, which I imagine people on Twitter aren't going to want to hear that from me. The other question is, you announced Project Helix. You're like, okay, here's the nice shiny logo. We don't have the official console name yet, but okay, it's Project Helix. Great. What are you going to do to make this appealing? We know that part of their like Xbox Series has some great features, right? Smart delivery was one of those. When we saw how PlayStation 5 did their game updates and save transfers, suddenly smart delivery was like a key feature. We were like, oh God, Xbox, we totally undersold this, because a lot of people were like, what is smart delivery? Who even cares about that? But it was as seamless as you would hope it would be. And early in the generation, when we were like crossing over from PS4 to PS5 and Xbox One to Series games, really key feature there. So there was features like smart delivery. There were features like quick resume, which allow you to flip between your apps. What effectively I think is going to be alt tabbing now, or if you look at what we saw on the Xbox Ally, you could bring up the home screen and tab between applications. It's going to carry that spirit. These are great features that I think make Xbox better, but are they selling points fully? I think the games and the software will define that, and that's why we've returned to this conversation of exclusivity, especially because a lot of it is driven by the news right now around PlayStation. Sales indicate Sony's PS5 ports are increasingly losing an audience share on PC, but it's only because of release timing. This is something that we're going to be talking about on the Mr. Matty channel a little bit, on how Sony is flipping the script a little bit here, because they are going to try to put the genie back in the lamp, and I think they can a lot easier than Xbox, which I'll explain in a moment here. But for the write-up here, by gamesindustry.biz, they write, following a Bloomberg report that Sony will no longer be publishing first-party PS5 games on PC, which suggested the decision was driven by poor sales of the recent titles on a platform, An analysis by Newzoo for GamesIndustry.biz has suggested the company's release strategy limited its reach on PC. The company's strategy of releasing PC ports well after PS5 release, save for the notable exception of 2024 hit Helldivers 2, led to lower audience share on PC compared to games that released on multiple platforms simultaneously, the firm said. The trend applied to all publishers, not just Sony. Quote, Newzoo's data shows that PlayStation titles ported to PC after their console launch typically see PC account for around 13% of total players in the first 3 months across both releases, says Manu Rosier, the director of marketing intelligence at Newzoo. By comparison, when comparable AAA titles launch simultaneously on PC and console, PC contributes closer to 44% of players in the same period of time. And you can actually see that with something like Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2, 13 million is the estimated number of players on Steam versus 5+ million on PlayStation, which if it was on its own, that's great. But obviously launching simultaneously on PC did something really special for that game. And funny enough, that's like the lone example that PlayStation had a big success there. But we know PlayStation's pulling back because they didn't give it everything. They weren't like Xbox, who I said made quite a spectacle out of it. Instead, they went kind of half-heartedly into it, hoping that the novelty of, oh my God, PlayStation games on PC would work. And at first it did, right? We saw how like Days Gone, Horizon, etc. did, but that novelty wore off and people started to learn like, oh, PC players are the most patient gamers in the world because you got Steam. And you just saw before this stream, we discovered a game called like Esoteric Ebb. And I'm like, oh, this came out just a couple of days ago. It looks incredible. I didn't know it. I'm just going to go play that. I don't need to wait for whatever old PlayStation games coming out because Zeitgeist is everything. Multiplat does matter. But for PlayStation, who's very important to Sony's business, exclusivity matters because you got to protect your console. You got to make your console worth it. And they just watched how Xbox made a spectacle out of going multi-platform and their hardware literally died in the process. So I say all of that to say that now we take a look at what Asha Sharma had to say about exclusivity. Jez had the opportunity to interview her. Keep in mind, this was a 13-minute interview. I did not have this context when I wasn't like super critical of the interview. I was like, it just feels like Jez had to hurry with this. I didn't know though that this was 13 minutes. So I think that's a little bit more defensible having that information here. And I think he did a great job with the time that he was given. There's been a ton of speculation about what kind of moves Asha might make. Xbox notoriously ditched any form of exclusivity on its games, shifting units to PlayStation, paying little mind to the criticisms that it reduces the need to actually buy an Xbox. Sharma told me that nothing is off the table when it comes to revising Xbox strategy, but finalizing the strategy will take time and data parsing. On Xbox's recent strategic decisions, Sharma said, the plan's the plan until it's not the plan. Here's the full quote. Right now, I need to learn candidly about the why of these decisions, what we're optimizing for, and what the data says about Xbox's strategy today. That's the honest answer. I'm looking at a lifetime value, not just what happened in a previous moment or in a short-term efficiency and things like that. The plan's the plan until it's not the plan, which I find interesting because I honestly thought in this same interview, she does mention to expect more information on hardware very soon. So she knew that hardware is coming soon. I feel like to know your hardware strategy, you also need to know that software strategy, right? Like, okay, you've parsed through the data. You know what you want to do with your software. So when you start talking to developers, you say to them, hey, we're looking for exclusive software, or we're looking for timed exclusive software. We're going back to that sort of walled garden approach. With Xbox, their challenge is significantly higher than what PlayStation has to do. PlayStation can put the genie back in the lamp because number one, they're known for exclusives. They're known for money hatting. Like, this is their business. They're like Nintendo. Like, if Nintendo returned to the mean, people wouldn't blink. It's what they know. But also PlayStation, again, did not go full send with it. They did put their full IP out there. They put God of War. They put Last of Us. They put Uncharted. They put all of their IP, right? Like, it's there. But the difference is they didn't go day and date with the new stuff. They gave you the old stuff. And it felt like they were kind of trying to tempt you into the PlayStation ecosystem while they were doing that. That's the part of the zeitgeist that is missing, the context that is missing, is that when PlayStation was bringing these things to PC, it was like, yeah, here's Ghost of Tsushima, but Yote is going to be exclusive to PS5. Like, come buy a PS5. And I think PC gamers are like, I'm good. I'll wait till Yote and Tsushima are out on PC combined. And PlayStation was like, wow, fuck, they're really going to wait us out. We don't need to do anything about that. With Xbox, it's been a long time coming. They committed in the Xbox One generation to PC games being day and date, right? Like, that was a commitment then. So they went way earlier than Sony and went all in, unlike Sony. So there's that. Day and date PC, now almost 2 generations ago. You combine that with, you sat down, you did your business update, which again, the word is spectacle. You made a show out of going multi-plat, And then 3, they lied about how much was going multi-plat, which we all knew was a lie at the time. When Phil sat down and said it's only these 4 games, we were all like, you're full of shit, dude. We know it's going to be more than 4 games. So with that combined with Game Pass, where also the expectation is for players subscribed, they're like, I don't got to pay for this stuff. You've not only got to retrain a lot of your customer base to start buying these games, and that means creating games that are worth that value and IP that are worth that value, but also reverting on business decisions that have been made since the Xbox One. And I just think there's at a certain point, unless you are willing to commit to it's going to hurt, and it's going to really hurt for a long while, like we're going to lose a lot of revenue, but we're going to build the Xbox brand up, then sure, I think they can do it. But here's the biggest barrier is Satya Nadella and Amy Hood. A lot of people look at what PlayStation's doing. They're like, well, Xbox can do the same. I'm like, no, they can't. Simply because PlayStation's business is so vital to Sony, whereas what Xbox is doing is not as vital to Microsoft. So they are sort of the plaything. And Satya's in the way. There's too much revenue to lose. They're going for a premium console. That means it's going to be more expensive. So I think that means it's more of an off-ramp. And then also, you got to think about this year. Halo, Gears, Forza, Fable. 4 of the most iconic Xbox IP are all going to PlayStation this year. And unless Asha makes a very aggressive move and unplugs all of those, which I guess is possible because it can send a strong message of like, oh, they're going for it. Again, it's going to hurt at first. They're going to lose revenue. But I wonder if Phil and Sarah and Matt could not convince Satya and Amy about these ridiculous 30% profit margins or about exclusivity and why it does matter, then how could Asha come in and do that? And I say that with all due respect to her and her potential and her capabilities here. But I think it's almost impossible to return back to that from an optical point of view, especially if you're about to take all the flagship IP and put them everywhere, and they're new games. It's E-Day. It's Fable back for the first time in a long time. It's a Halo campaign remake. Like, these are big swings. It's the next Forza Horizon game. These aren't old things. As much as I would like to see Xbox dive back into that exclusive business, I do think, I say this kindly, that I think a lot of people are kidding themselves. I would love to be wrong about that. I think there's a reason Xbox should do it. But again, if Satya and Amy aren't in this situation, then I think it's a different conversation. And if it really was always like the Phil Sarah vision of going multi-plat, then we're about to see some serious revisionist history on what kind of leaders they were. If Satya and Amy are secretly for exclusivity and they're like, oh, you could have convinced us this whole time, but this is what Phil and Sarah thought was worth it. And keep in mind, they're still trying to make sure the Activision acquisition is valuable. Do they spin that off at some point and go like, that'd be an interesting choice as well. But basically, you got to reorganize the entire economy of Xbox, which I think is a much heavier lift than PlayStation. So I think immediately when you start to embrace like, this is going to be an open PC platform as well as an open Xbox platform, that does make it an open platform where you can play anything. And that is very good, by the way. But I don't think that indicates to me exclusivity returns. So it'll be interesting to see what Project Helix is. But I am not going in with the unfair expectation to Xbox that they are going to suddenly pull back on a thing that's made them a lot of money. But also, is it making them so much money that, like, we saw PlayStation wasn't making as much? They made $2 billion off of their PC and Xbox and Switch sales. Compared to the overall amount they made, it was like 2% of each quarter, 5% tops. Is that the same for Xbox where the margins aren't really there? It's like we're not really moving the needle. So it'll be interesting. It'll be really interesting to see where they go with it, but I'm not holding my breath at the moment until I see action from the leaders that suggest otherwise. But right now, it's a lot of lip service, and so interesting times nonetheless. We'll see where things go with Project Helix.